So Russia's war machine is being hammered on two fronts at once. On the battlefield, they're not doing so well in Pokrovsk. In fact, they're being routed in Pokrovsk, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But they're also doing these long-range strikes on oil refineries and oil depots and things along these lines. And it's really the momentum has shifted significantly. This isn't just an update. This is a potential turning point or inflection point in the war. Let's talk about what's going on. Ukrainian drones hit a Russian oil refinery in Ufa more than 1,000 kilometers from the border, sparking smoke and airport restrictions. I don't know a whole lot about the Ufa strike, but here's what we do know about Ufa. The complex Bashnev in Ufa is 1,400 kilometers from the front line. Bashnet has a total capacity of around 23 to 26 million tons per year. It's a complex of 3 oil refineries located right next to each other. It's been hit before. During the previous attack, the AVT-5 unit was hit. This AVT issue, this is like how they start the processing. I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, and then the Ufimsky oil refinery struck by Ukrainian drones in the rain 1,450 kilometers away from Ukraine. This in the rain part is interesting because the weather really has a great effect on whether these drones can fly or operate the same way. It's kind of like in World War II, D-Day was pushed back a day because of the weather, same kind of thing. The refinery has capacity to produce 7.5 million tons of fuel per year. And so here we see the drone going overhead, and let's see if we can hear him. So there he is up in the sky, just about to enter. There we are. Yeah, so the Russians are experiencing some of what they're bringing to Ukraine. Ukrainian drones hit the exact points that keep Russia's refineries alive, new analysis shows. So that AVT unit thing, this thing is interesting. AVT unit is the first step in crude oil refining. Damaging just one can shut down an entire refinery. So I try to point that out when that happens. Somebody, one of my viewers, told me about that early on when the refinery started being hit. So it was something to keep an eye on. 3 days after the last drone sanctions were applied, that's when they hit Feodosia oil depot 3 days ago. It's still burning. The reports have indicated up to 11 tanks were sanctioned, with 6 burning still today. Now, the fog of war, we get different reports. This is saying 11 tanks were hit, and this was saying in Feodosia 16 fuel tanks that survived previous attack were damaged. So I'm not sure. Somewhere between 11 and 16 seems to be about what's happened. And this is from the, I think this is official, like Ukrainian Ukraine put this out that it was 16. So it's probably more, it's probably closer to 16. Okay, Russia's Chelyabinsk Oblast, 1,700 kilometers from Ukraine, just had its first ever drone alert. So again, the war is coming home to Russia, and it's going to continue to come home to Russia. All right, here's Jake Bro talking about Ukraine has successfully cut off all rail and shipping of fuel to Russian-occupied Crimea and Kherson. But what's fascinating about this is that they attacked a rail line and they haven't fixed it yet. Let's listen to Jake.
2 months later, Russia still can't clear a single destroyed train in occupied part of Zaporizhia. A Ukrainian drone strike on August 19th left a fuel convoy wrecked and the only railway in ruins. If you remember, this was 2 months ago. Ukraine used drones to strike a fuel car. This was in Zaporizhia. This was 2 months ago, and apparently the Russians have been unable to clear it. According to open source intelligence, satellite imagery from the Copernicus platform shows that the destroyed train remains lodged on the tracks. It is blocked, the only rail line in the Russian-occupied part of Zaporizhia since the attack. So here's the railway map, and you can see, I think this fuel car was struck here. Ukraine did something to the track to get the fuel car to stop. They then launched drones to destroy the fuel car. This was a massive fire in Zaporizhia. And I'm guessing that Russia can't clear and repair the track because it's so close to Ukrainian-controlled territory. With fiber optic FPV drones, if Russia sends out repair crews, serious machinery, it's just going to get blown up. So effectively, Crimea and Kherson has been isolated from the rail network from Donetsk and Rostov-on-Don.
And that's important because they really are dependent on railways. And so this is no small thing. You might just think, well, why not just send out trucks? Well, they're going to have to, but that they generally use the railway in a way that we don't even think about here in the United States. Okay, overnight, Russia launched 113 drones, mostly Shaheds, from multiple directions. Ukrainian air defenses downed or suppressed 86 of them. Strikes were recorded at 11 locations. So I just want to point out something. Representative Don Bacon has posted this. He's a Republican from Nebraska. The Russians have bombed over 910 individual Ukrainian hospitals and clinics since the war started. Like, how is that not the headline? Like, that's big news, and that needs to be just shouted from the housetops. Here's some cockpit footage. I might have shown this the other day. A cockpit footage from Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29 Fulcrum engaged in an air battle during a major Russian raid last week. But it's still worth watching again. Seen here shooting down Russian Shahed attack drones with R-73 air-to-air missile. It's just going after Shaheds. Nobody is hurt in this, but wow. I mean, it's just, you'll see the thing launch and then you'll see, boom, there you are. I think I did show this one last week, but it's still pretty cool. Okay, Russians have begun installing machine guns on light aircraft to intercept drones. This is what the Ukrainians do. So the Russians are learning from the Ukrainians about how to take down drones, and because they have to, because the Ukrainian drones are just becoming pervasive now. Defense forces repelled another Russian assault in Dobropilya sector. I'm going to talk about that more in just a little bit. 3 Russian motorized rifle brigades and 1 Marine brigade took part in the assault. So this is the story. We have multiple things happening simultaneously. We have the strikes at night from the Ukrainians onto oil refineries. We have the strikes at night from the Russians on Ukrainian, mostly civilians and factories and things along those lines, at warehouses, grocery stores, that sort of thing. And then we have the battlefield. So I'm going to come back to the battlefield, but first let me talk about a little bit more about the drones and strikes at night and that sort of thing. The UK has delivered 85,000 military drones to Ukraine in just 6 months, investing £6 million this year alone. The funds support production and supply, including the new Octopus interceptors designed to take down Russian Shaheds. So this is what one of these, like, that's not necessarily an octopus, this is a different one. This is what interceptors look like. Side-by-side comparison shows the Russian Shahed drone versus the FPV interceptor from the armed forces. So you see the scale of the size of the drone, the Shahed, twice the size of the human being and much wider. You see the interceptor being about the size of the human's head, well, maybe a little bit bigger than the human's head, or maybe the size of a human arm, and it's able to knock down these drones. It's pretty amazing. To date, Sting, developed by Wild Hornets, has intercepted over 600 Russian aerial targets. Pretty impressive. Now, the Ukrainians have learned from the Russians as well. The Bulava mace is a Ukrainian loitering munition derived from Russia's Lancet drone. Bulava uses artificial intelligence for autonomous targeting, capable of identifying and striking known weak spots on enemy armored vehicles during its final approach. So they're learning from each other. This is, if it wasn't such devastation, it would be just fascinating to watch how much growth there is here, but there has to be in order to stay ahead. Okay, if this has been meaningful to you, I'm just pausing for a second and saying, hey, look, I do these every day. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'll be back tomorrow to update you more if this is something that's interesting to you. So hit the subscribe button if you haven't. All right, battlefield, 1,070 Russians off the battlefield day over day, just a little bit above the yearly average. And at this rate, we're going to see another 100,000 by the end of the year. year. So it'll be about 1,200,000 off the battlefield. 3 tanks, 2 armored fighting vehicles, but 43 artillery systems. That's a really high number. And then 141 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's also a high number. And there's a reason for those high numbers. Again, this is Ragnar Gudmundsson's dashboard. Engagements and casualties down from the previous day, but notable artillery losses. Again, artillery losses, 43. That's very high. Okay, in the Sumy region, Ukrainian forces have advanced into Oleksivka, pushing back Russian forces who recently tried to reinforce the area. Russian sources confirmed the de facto loss of Oleksivka, Sumy region. Ukrainian forces are already in the center and control the southern part. Attempts to bring Russian reserves forward are failing, with most units taking heavy losses before reaching the front. And it looks like Oleksivka is going to be abandoned. The Russians have just been pushed and pushed and pushed back out in Sumy. In the Pokrovsk direction, there are 59 assaults. 59 is about, it's at a little high for the 1,000 or so casualties day over day. But what's interesting is what's happening here. Pokrovsk direction, the Pokrovsk offensive is grinding to a halt, or Russia's Pokrovsk offensive is grinding to a halt. Ukraine's counterstrikes and drones expose deep cracks in the Russian command. So here's just some images of this. Russia has been desperately throwing everything that they have at Ukraine near Pokrovsk. And they started using heavy armored columns again, which is very weird. And now, the part of the thinking is that they can't send up motorcycles and light vehicles at the same rate, especially not motorcycles, because mud season is just starting. So this is all they have left if they're going to approach. Ukraine's been inflicting devastating losses, and I mean devastating losses, on anything that moves in the area. And so we see the tanks and things along those lines. After a long pause, the Russians have resumed attacks supported by columns of armored vehicles. They tried to reach their forces north of Pokrovsk, but were destroyed long before they reached their intended destination. Around a dozen Russian vehicles have been destroyed there. And these bunny ears, they cut off here, they cut off here, and they're trying to cut off again a little bit lower. Russian forces lost 50 soldiers in the single assault near Novotoretsky, trapped in razor wire and anti-tank obstacles. Desperate to rescue the encircled troops near Dobropilia, they sent waves into the same kill zone, despite zero success. So again, it's been horrific for the Russians around this area. Ukrainian drones eliminated troops faster than Russia can replace them near Pokrovsk. What devastated Russia's western offensive is now systematically deployed eastward of Pokrovsk in the 12-kilometer drone kill zones, where every vehicle, motorcycle, and soldier faces constant surveillance and immediate destruction. The strategy has already proven devastating. 47 armored vehicles destroyed across 1 kilometer of road. Now, this, I'm not sure what the time frame is. This might be over the past, since the beginning of the month or over the past month or something, but just over 1 kilometer of road. This isn't overnight. Russian forces have abandoned mechanized assaults entirely, resorting to small infantry teams crawling through fields at night, yet 9 and 10 infiltration groups never reached their targets. Commander Brovdy, call sign Magyar, oversees the eastern sector operation on the brutal mathematics. Ukraine drones must eliminate Russian soldiers faster than Moscow can mobilize replacements. I think this is a brilliant way of understanding how the Ukrainians think about the war. They have to destroy soldiers faster than they can replace them, and drones are the key to doing that. That's why drones went up to 5% of the Ukrainian forces. Okay. And so here we just see some Ukrainian drones going after a van, a truck, a field gun, a soldier hiding in cover, all kinds of things. But this is the way that the war is being conducted, and it's really hard to move forward. Operators of the Unmanned Systems Forces unit strike significant enemy armored assets. In particular, during October, units successfully struck 12 tanks, 46 armored vehicles, 642 enemy personnel. So, again, it's all about drones. Drones are the big thing. Now, when we're talking about drones, here's the Russians showing their latest tech. New Russian drones were presented Are you scared yet? Now, notice that this guy who has this drone that's going to lift him up, and I think there is something about this, that this is what the future may very well look like. But the Russians don't really have this together yet, and they're trying to show that they do. Notice that this platform that he's on is still, like, he's stuck to the platform. I think this is to stabilize. I could be wrong, but I think that's to stabilize this imperfect drone ability. But let's just see what happens here. Yeah, look at that. Oops. Yeah, it's not working out quite like they want it to work out yet, and so they're touting this awesome technology that they're not there yet with. Now, this is the technology that they are there with. Now, I saw this when I was in former Soviet countries. This was back in the early when was this? The early 2000s, 2001, 2003, 2004. What I saw was that they would have these great shopping malls, but nobody was buying. But the real technology was more like a kiosk on the corner. That's where they actually were. Okay, so, and that's fine. But this is the Russian technology that actually works. A Russian soldier filmed a donkey wearing a helmet and body armor. Donkey, he says, donkey, what unit are you from? I've seen everything in my life. Everything but a donkey in a helmet. Yeah. Donkey, what unit are you from, buddy? It says, are you an assault or rear folk? I won't hurt you. Yeah. I don't know that the donkey wants to hang out with him. All right. Last little bit about technology, and that's this. The Chinese are using robot dogs, and it's going to become something that is going to be used for military purposes. But for now, it's entertaining in theme parks, a Jurassic Park style attraction. Robot dogs have been reprogrammed to imitate dinosaurs, delighting children and visitors. Glimpse of how China is using this tech, and they're like, here's the yeah. This kid's excited about it. So, yeah. I mean, but what'll happen in the future? That's the question. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you right now. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.